Welcome to the Plato Paradigm, a paradigm shift in reading Plato's dialogues. Episode 228, Lysis 214d to 215a. It says a lot about Lysis that he doesn't ask Socrates what he means. Socrates claims that worthless men are not similar to themselves, and Lysis doesn't wonder how one thing can be dissimilar to itself. Dissimilarity requires at least two things, so that one of them is not similar to the other one. Socrates provides a clue by saying that such people are reckless and unstable, so he's clearly talking not about the body, but about the soul. And it so happens that there was a medical theory at his time already in which the soul is threefold. There's the rational part, the emotional part, and the desiring part. If these are not in tune with each other, if they're not in harmony, then the emotions or the desires can take over against the rational part. And then you can say that someone is unstable. They are not in control of themselves. If this is what Socrates means, he would also be implying that the good person has all of these parts of the soul in harmony. They all work towards a goal or goals, but they don't contradict each other. They don't sabotage each other's efforts. If this is the case, however, Socrates is talking about some very rare people. Most people don't have such peaceful or harmonic souls, at least not in the ancient world. Since Lysis is passive and doesn't ask any questions, Socrates will have to keep going, and I suspect that he will have to say something outrageous eventually if he's going to get Lysis to react at all. Tutotoinun ainittontai hos emoidokusin o hetaire, hoi to homoion to homoio philon legontes, hos ho agathos to agatho monos mono philos. Hode kakos ute agatho ute kakou depote es alethe philian erchetai. Sundukesoi kateniusen. They are hinting at this then, so they seem to me, O companion, those saying that the similar is a friend to the similar, that the good person is a friend only to the good alone, while the bad person goes into a true friendship neither with a good person or a bad person. Does this accord with you? He nodded. There are many cases in the dialogues where the interlocutor doesn't answer at all, but then that's because he's at a loss or he's still waiting for the answer he's expecting. And then Socrates carries on until he does get a response. Here, Lysis does actually answer, but not in words. He nods. And this may possibly suggest that we're supposed to understand that Lysis is engaged in the conversation. He's so wrapped up in thinking that he doesn't actually say anything. When someone is merely confused or unsure, we normally get a verbal response to that effect. They say, well, it's possible, or I don't know. But here he nods. So he is actually in agreement, but he forgets to speak. The problem for me is that he should be confused, or he should have an objection, because the poets and the physikoi did not intimate this at all. They were not the ones who said that the bad are dissimilar to themselves. This is Socrates entirely. And this conclusion arises from that overinterpretation made by Socrates. Echomen ara ede tines esin hoi philoi, hogar logos he min se maine hoti hoian osin agathoi, panuge efe doke. We have then who are the friends, for the argument shows us that they would be good. Absolutely, he said, it seems. This is what Lysis had wanted to hear all along. This is why he interrupted the conversation with Menexenus. He thought it was going in the wrong direction. He wants to think that Menexenus and he are friends and that they are good. This conclusion is actually just the previous sentence reframed. Socrates has already just said that it looks like only the good can be friends to only the good. Therefore, the good are friends. Socrates has spoon-fed Lysis this conclusion. We shouldn't be so quick to accept this conclusion, and we wouldn't even know what it meant anyway. What does Socrates mean if he says that only the good are friends? In what way are they good? In what way are they friends? And why can't people who are not good be friends with other people? Simply because they are dissimilar with themselves? What we do learn from this exchange is that Lysis really doesn't think too hard. He's rather passive. He accepts things that he agrees with already, and we see that Socrates uses this in order to manipulate Lysis, but we don't know why he's manipulating Lysis. Just for fun, we should recall that Hippothales is still listening, and Socrates may be saying what he's saying for the benefit of Hippothales. And if that's the case, Socrates may be saying what he's saying for everybody present, because they are all listening. And we shouldn't forget the immediate audience, the person or persons to whom Socrates is telling this story. Kai emoi endigo, kai toi disgeraino tige auto. It seems to me as well, I said. However, I'm troubled by something in it. Socrates sees that Lysis isn't reacting properly, he's not asking questions, he's not objecting, so Socrates has to do the work for him. However, we shouldn't assume that the objection Socrates will now make is the objection he expected from Lysis. Socrates will probably raise a completely different objection in the hope that Lysis will then react to that one. Phereun o prostios, idomen tikai hypopteuo. Come then, by Zeus, let's see what I actually suspect. Ho homoios to homoio, kath hoson homoios, philos, kai estin chresimos ho toiutos to toiuto. The person similar to someone similar, to the extent that he's similar, he's a friend, is he also useful, such a person to such a person? There's a tendency in Platonic dialogues for the many, the ones who don't understand, to treat useful as beneficial. But it is argued in some dialogues that the useful is useful for both bad and good ends, and therefore can in some cases be harmful and in other cases beneficial. Useful is neutral. I can imagine cases where two similar people would be more useful than one person. Two similar people could carry something heavy, for example, but I don't think this is the question Socrates is asking. The emphasis is on similarity. what would someone similar to me add to myself? I can do things for myself. How would someone similar help me in any other way than simply being an extra pair of hands? Maalonde hode. Rather, this way. Socrates looks as though he asked that question and now is rethinking it. He is now going to modify his previous question as if he now realizes that it wasn't very well formulated. In fact, that earlier question was the bridge to the next question. He's moving from similar to useful and now to beneficial or harmful, I'm guessing. Hotiun homoion, hotoun homoio, tina o Philia nechen, e tina blaben an poiesai dunaito, homeikai auto hauto. Anything similar to anything similar, what benefit could it have? Or what harm could it do, which it couldn't do to itself? The question here focuses on the whole point of something similar being able to do anything qualitatively different to someone that someone couldn't do to himself. Socrates has again done the philosophical technique of turning everything into the neuter to make it abstract. The question is no longer about a person in particular, but about anything at all, which would include anything in physics. Socrates then adds the corollary, etian pathen homeikai hautu pathoi, or what could happen to it which couldn't happen to it by itself. And then in general, tade toiauta posan hupalelon agape thee, medemian epicurian alelois echonta, estin hopos, uc estin. Such things then, how would they be loved by each other, having no influence upon each other? Is that at all possible? No, it isn't. The Greek actually says having no aid for each other, but I've translated aid as influence here. It seems to me to be what Socrates actually means in this instance. I hate having to say that, but sometimes that is the case. The argument is that something similar to oneself adds nothing either of good or of bad, and in that case it's not just aid which is missing, but influence altogether. It adds absolutely nothing to oneself. The other point to make here is that Socrates has added a new word for love or affection, agapao. In modern Greek, agape is the word for love.